This is Woodside Church Kids.
Hey everyone, welcome to this week's video. My name is Matty and this is for the Kids and Engage. Last week we looked at the story of Abraham and all of God's promises that he made. And this week we are following on that story. Abraham had a son that we learned about last week called Isaac. And when Isaac grew up a little bit, he married a woman called Rebecca. And we join the story when Rebecca is pregnant after Isaac prayed to God that she would have children. And our story starts in the Bible where it says, "But the two children struggled with each other in her womb. And Rebecca didn't know why this happened, so she asked God. And God said to her, 'The sons in your womb will become two nations, two great nations, and your older son will serve your younger son.'" Now, this was interesting for Rebecca because normally in those times, the older son had these special rights. They were the firstborn son. They had the firstborn rights. This meant that when the father died, the older son would be the one who would inherit all of their stuff. The older son would be the one who would get all their father's stuff when they died. And generally, the younger son would then start to work for the oldest child. Now, this doesn't really happen so much with anymore. So I think the best way we can compare it is if we look at the royal family, it's always the oldest child of the queen or king that becomes the next queen or king. And so that's kind of how this firstborn right works. And so we follow on this story, and Jacob and Esau are born. Esau is born first, and he comes out and he's really, really hairy. Like, really hairy. He's covered in hairs. It looks like he's born wearing a coat. And then straight after him, holding his ankle, Jacob's born. And Jacob is not quite so hairy. And these two twins grow up and they're very, very different to each other. Esau loved being outside and he loved hunting. And Isaac really enjoyed eating the food that he hunted for. So Esau was Isaac's favourite. But Jacob was a bit different. He didn't really like being outside. He much preferred staying at home and cooking. So he stayed with his mum at home and he became Rebecca's favourite. Now we follow these boys as they grow older and they grow older. And one day Esau went out hunting all day and he came back from the wilderness and was exhausted and hungry and saw Jacob was making some stew. And Esau said to Jacob, "I'm starved, give me some of that red stew." But Jacob was a bit sneaky. He was quite clever and he thought, "I know what, I can get Esau to trade me something here." So he said, "Trade me your firstborn rights." So Esau was starving. He said, "What use are my firstborn rights? I'm going to die if I don't have this stew. Here, have my rights." And so in this way, the Bible says that Esau showed contempt for his rights of the firstborn. It meant he didn't really care about what that meant. So we follow on our story again, and the two get older and older, and eventually at this point, Isaac is getting pretty old. He's really old and he's starting to go very, very blind. So he can't see anything at all. And he knows that maybe he doesn't have long left to live. So he says to his son Esau, "Look, I'm going to bless you. I'm going to carry on the blessing that God has given to me, that he gave to Abraham before him. I'm going to bless you so that God will continue to help and protect and look after you." And so he says, "Then bring me my favourite food and I will give you a blessing before I die." But Esau wasn't the only one that heard this story. Rebecca was actually listening as well, and her favourite son was Jacob. So she heard what Isaac said to Esau, and she instead told Jacob what had happened and said, "Look, Jacob, Isaac's going to bless Esau, but I think we can get him to bless you instead." Now, because Isaac was very old and couldn't see, they had to try and trick Isaac into thinking that Jacob was his much hairier brother Esau. So what she did, she made some stew out of some goats and put the goat skin on Jacob's arms and on his neck, so that if Isaac went to feel him, he would feel furry, much like Esau would have done. And she also got some of Esau's clothes that would have been probably pretty stinky, because he loved being outside, and then made Jacob wear them so that he would smell like Esau. So Jacob went up to Isaac and said, "It's Esau, your firstborn son. I've done as you told me and I've made the stew. Sit up and eat it so you can give me your blessing." And Isaac felt Jacob's hands, and they were furry and hairy just like Esau's. And Isaac caught a smell of his clothes, and he was convinced that this was actually Esau and not Jacob. So Isaac blessed Jacob, and as soon as he finished the blessing, Esau came back in hunting and said, "Look, I'm here to receive my blessing." But Isaac had already blessed Jacob. See, Jacob had actually stolen this blessing from Esau. And when Esau heard this, he let out a loud and bitter cry. He asked to be blessed too, so Isaac blesses him as well, but he'd given the right of the firstborn son. He'd given that blessing to Jacob. And Esau was so angry at his brother that he actually started started making a plan to kill him. So Jacob had to run away. Now, further forward in the Bible, as we go through, we learn that these two brothers actually do get back together again and they become friends again. But it takes a long time. You see, Esau was really hurt by what Jacob had done, even though before he traded his firstborn rights for some stew. And that's the end of our story in the Bible. And there's kind of two things that I want to look at in this story that relate to us. The first is that even before Jacob and Esau were born, God said that your younger son is going to rule over your older son, which would have been crazy for most people. See, even before they were born, God knew exactly what was going to happen. He knew the plan that He had for their lives. And God knows the plan He has for our lives as well. Even before we're born, God knows us and He loves us and He cares about what we're going to do in our lives. And my second point is that even though Jacob lied and deceived Isaac to receive the blessing, God still continued to help him and to love him and protect him. God loved Jacob even though he lied. And because he made his promise to Abraham, and then through that promised Isaac, and through this blessing now promised Jacob, he stood by it. See, God still loved Jacob even though Jacob had lied. And that is the story of Jacob and Esau. Now, in this week's edition of Woodside Kids Weekly, we've got a fun activity for you to try. Because Esau was a hunter and loved archery, I think it'd be fun if you can fling some rubber bands around in your house and work on your archery skills as well. Try not to shoot people or pets, because they won't like it and it might hurt them quite a bit. I've got another activity sheet which is a fill in the blanks to help you remember the story. You just write the name of the person in the blank space on the sheet, so it fills out the story for you. And we've got a couple of crafts for you to try. We can always talk to God. Rebecca talked to God when she didn't know what was happening with these two children before they were born. And they talked to God about it. And we can talk to God at any time too. At the end of my videos, I always say chat to Jesus. And so to help remind us that we can always talk to God about anything that we're worried about, we're making cardboard telephones. And our other craft is, much like Jacob's arm coverings where he had pretended to be Esau, we're going to try and make our own out of stuff we can find around the house, or wool, or maybe some grass from the back garden. And as always, I love seeing the stuff you get up to. I've already got some photos from this week, which are just really cool. So please send me your photos on my email, and I'll try and put them in next week's edition of Woodside Kids Weekly. So until next week, keep well, help at home, and chat to Jesus. Bye.